Gosh, I'm out of words. Standing here in front of you all is literally giving me stage fright. I feel that my body is trembling, my heart is beating really fast, and I think you guys can notice that my voice is shaking a bit as well. So, this is anxiety, isn't it? Yeah, this is anxiety. I'm feeling very anxious right now. And frankly speaking, I'm kind of worried. So how many of you all would say that you would be anxious if you were standing here instead of me? Raise your hands, please. Yeah? Yeah, nice. Thank you. Yes, so I'm anxious and I'm glad that you guys would be anxious as well. So how many of you all would admit that you have anxiety or that you have social anxiety disorder if you were standing here instead of me? Yeah, quite a lot, right? So, a large population-based study showed that the lifetime prevalence of anxiety disorder is about 30%, meaning that approximately 30% of individuals around the world suffer from some sort of anxiety or the other at some point in their life. And that's quite a lot, isn't it? But that's just for anxiety. What about for depression? What about for OCD? What about for schizophrenia? What about for insomnia? How many of you all would say that you suffer from some sort of insomnia? I did actually. I remember being in bed, trying to fall asleep, but not being able to. Tossing and turning around, but still not being able to. I remember being able to fall asleep, but then waking up maybe around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning and then wide awake, like an owl. And then I decided that I need to seek help for myself. And thank God I can sleep much, much better now. So if so many of us suffer from some sort of mental health issues or the other, why is it so difficult for us to talk about it? I mean, would we have the same level of discomfort if we had to talk about our other health issues, like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, constipation? No, right? But then when it comes to talking about our brain health, we shy away. We talk about our heart, our lungs, our kidney, our liver, our uterus, our hair, nails, skin. But then when it comes to talking about one of the most important organs of our body, our brain, we shy away. Why is that? Well, it's the stigma. It's the stigma of mental illness. Stigma is a mark of shame. So when we say mental health stigma, what we actually mean is we feel shameful. We feel ashamed that someone we know might find out that we suffer from some sort of mental health issues. We feel shameful that we suffer from mental health issues. So this is called as self-stigma. So now I would like to give you an example of self-stigma that I believe many of my clients face. While waiting for their turn to enter my room at the hospital that I work at, a lot of them have mentioned to me that they feel scared, that they feel worried. And I joke with them and then I ask them, well, it's me that they're scared of. I mean, am I so scary? Do I look so horrific? I hope not. But then, yes, I can be rude. At times, I can be very rude. And who else would know that better other than my family members back at home? So, if not me, then what? Truth be told, they are awkward. They feel awkward that someone they know might see them entering my room. Not because I'm scary, not because I'm rude, but because of the fact that I'm a psychiatrist and they're entering a psychiatrist's room. It's written in big bold letters outside my door. Dr. Richa Amatya, MD, Psychiatry, Department of Psychiatry. So the word psychiatry is the problem here. Thank God it's not me. So what I'm trying to say is a lot of people choose to keep their mental health issues a secret in fear of being discriminated, in fear of being stigmatized. But that's just what people with mental illness go through. But what about for those people who do not suffer from any mental health issues? What about them? Do they feel the stigma towards people with mental health issues? Do they express the stigma towards people with mental health issues? For instance, let's talk about us. Let's imagine that none of us here suffer from any sort of mental health issues. How many of you all would say that you express or feel stigma towards mental health issues and people with mental health disorders? A lot of us might not even be aware that our behavior is stigmatizing. A lot of us might not even be aware that we express or feel the stigma towards people with mental health issues. So this is called as public stigma. So now I would like to give you an example of public stigma, not of mental illness, but rather of leprosy. For that, I would like to take you back in time when I was a child. Back then, leprosy was considered to occur in those people who had committed grave sin as a punishment from God. It was considered to be so horrible, terrible, that people would even refrain from touching those with leprosy. Okay, so imagine being thrown out on the streets by your own family members, denied of food, denied of water, denied of all the basic needs. I truly can't imagine being in that situation. But that's exactly what people with leprosy faced back in those times. Growing up, I also remember watching ads on TV that tried to raise awareness about leprosy. In that ad, I remember two of the most influential actors, Nepali actors, Richa Amatya and Madhusha Shrestha. They tried to raise awareness about leprosy. Okay, and in that ad, they showed that it's okay to touch a leper. It's okay to live in the same house as a leper. So with gradual, after the medications for leprosy was introduced and with the broadcast, the telecast of such influential ads on Nepal TV, the leper stigma gradually ameliorated. So that's what people with leprosy faced back in those times. And similar to that, people with mental illness face discrimination today. Okay? So the general public might consider people with depression to be lazy, people with anxiety to be craving attention, people with psychosis to be dangerous. They might even make fun of people with mental health issues. I've heard people say things such as, she's a psycho, he's a lunatic. No wonder they need to see a psychiatrist. And these are examples of stigmatizing behavior. These are examples of public stigma. Now, I want you all to be very truthful to yourself and close your eyes. Close your eyes and just ask yourself, have I ever made such stigmatizing remarks? And if you are very truthful to yourself, most likely the answer will be a yes. Okay, so I want you to look at this slide again. So this is public stigma and this is self-stigma. So how does self-stigma arise? It arises when the public stigma is internalized. So when public stigma is internalized, it turns into self-stigma. For instance, let's imagine that I'm someone who has depression, and I've heard a lot of people say that people with depression are lazy, they're good for nothing, they're worthless, they do not need to go and see a psychiatrist, it's all in their head, you just need to be strong, you'll get away with it. They're just faking illness so that they can get away with things. So after hearing such remarks, gradually I start to believe what the public believes. I start to see myself the way public views me. I start to see myself as a lazy, worthless, good-for-nothing individual. Gradually, then I start to feel ashamed of myself. That's when public stigma has turned into self-stigma. And this is exactly where we need to stop. We need actions here so that we can stop the public stigma from being internalized into self-stigma. So how do we do that? Yes, we can have awareness programs, we can have campaigns, and hope that we will be able to reduce the stigma of mental illness. But frankly speaking, we cannot change what the public thinks, views, or behaves or acts until and unless they truly want to. All right, so public stigma we can try and ameliorate, but it's completely up to the public to want to change. Right, so what can we change? As an individual, what can we change? We can change the way we perceive things, the way we feel about ourselves, the way we feel about things. We can learn to self-prioritize. We can learn to practice self-compassion. We can learn to believe that I am enough and that my happiness matters. We can learn to embrace our mental health. So yes, I'm a psychiatrist and I suffer from insomnia. And at times I can be extremely anxious. For instance, when my son, who is 11 years old right now, when he used to become sick, I literally used to get a panic attack. So yes, a psychiatrist who is anxious and who has insomnia, I'm only human, right? So yes, we have to learn that we are able to bounce back even when put down. We can learn to empower ourselves. So, talking about self-empowerment, would I be disheartened if I don't get a round of applause from all of you at the end? Would I? Of course I would. Who would not? Right? But then, am I strong enough to let it go and move forward? That I definitely am. Nevertheless, would I be delighted if you all would support me, support each other, in fact, in this journey to reduce the stigma of mental illness? Yes, indeed I would. So let us all put our hands together for ourselves, for all of us, in fact, so that we can work together to reduce the stigma of mental illness. Let us all put our hands together for ourselves so that we can embrace our mental health and empower ourselves. Thank you so much.